Welcome to the candle lab. Obviously, for this lab, you're going to need a candle. The purpose of the lab is to learn how to make quality scientific observations. To start with, let's talk about the lab itself. You're going to take your candle and you're going to make observations before you light that candle. So I want 2 minutes of observations before lighting. After 2 minutes, then take that candle and light it. And while it is lit, make observations for 5 more minutes. After 5 minutes, blow that candle out. And after being blown out, make 2 more minutes worth of observations. So altogether, you'll have 9 minutes of observations, and I want to see a list of at least 20 total observations. All right, some things to think about with this lab. First of all, check with your parent or guardian about the candle you use. Check to make sure it's okay to use it. 2 safety precautions. Put that candle on some tin foil or something else that can't start on fire. It also helps to pick up any wax that might drip. So put that candle on top of something like tin foil. Second safety factor, if you have long hair, tie that hair back. It's too easy to be distracted down here like this, making observations, and to have your long hair swing into that candle flame. So get that hair tied back. Right, let's talk about the purpose of this lab. If we look at the scientific method, which we are talking about, we've got many steps and processes in this method. But the very first part of the whole process is the observation. In order to ask any kinds of questions, to come up with any hypotheses, to design any experiments, we have to make observations about the world around us. We have to make observations that we can ask questions about. So learning how to make quality observations is very important. It's the first part of this whole process. And don't forget, the purpose of the scientific method is simply to help us answer questions. It's a method that lots of people use, not just in science, to help answer questions efficiently about the world around us. So with your 20 observations, you're then going to have to classify them. The first classification you have to decide, is your statement a fact or an inference? So here's the definition of a fact. It is something you actually observe or measure. It's something that is unbiased. You don't have any emotion or opinion in that statement. And if it required 5 senses, one of your 5 senses to get, then more than likely you have a fact. When we talk about facts, we can never say that they are absolutely true, because we may have evidence that comes in down the road that shows us that that statement was not true. So a fact can always be proven to be false. So we never say that a fact is absolutely true. We can only say that for right now, this is a true statement, simply because it has not been proven false. And it may never get proven false, but we have to leave the door open for that possibility. So we can't say that this is a proven, absolutely true fact. The only thing we can say is that this statement has not yet been proven false. So that's a fact. What's an inference? An inference is an assumption. So it's an assumption based on former knowledge or former experience or based on other observations that you have made. So in inference, you haven't actually seen it or touched it or measured it or felt it. It's an assumption based on other things. Let's practice. Here's our first statement. The candle is 10 centimeters tall. Is that a fact or is it an inference? To answer that, you have to think about this question. Did I actually have to see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, or measure it to get that statement? So to get the statement that this candle is 10 centimeters tall, I actually had to measure it. So if you say that this is a fact, then yes, you are correct. Second statement says that the candle is made out of wax. So to answer that, is that a fact or an inference? You have to ask the question, did I actually see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or measure it to make that statement? So if you answered that this was an inference, then you are correct. And the reason this is an inference is I did not actually take a piece of wax and test it. I simply went by past experience, which tells me, well, other candles are made of wax, so I'm going to assume that this one is also made of wax. Since I didn't actually see it or touch it or measure it, does that make an inference a bad thing to use? No, not necessarily. But it does tell us that we inferred this. We're making an assumption based on some prior experience. All right, the second type of classification for each of your observations is you have to decide, is it qualitative or quantitative? Look at the root word. If we have qualitative, we are looking at the quality of that object. In this case, the quality of the candle. So quality is a description, like what color is it? How does it smell? How does it feel? If we are talking about quantitative, again, that root word is quantity. So quantity means that we actually have to measure it. If I want to know the quantity of the length, I have to measure it. If I want the quantity of the mass, I have to put this on a balance and measure it. So quantitative are observations that we actually measure. Practice statements here that candle is white. Well, it's definitely a fact, not an inference, but is it qualitative or quantitative? To answer that question, I have to ask, did I have to measure it to make that statement? So if you said that this was qualitative, you are right. I did not have to measure it. I'm simply looking at it with my eyes and making that statement. Second practice statement, the candle has a mass of 10 grams. To get that statement, did I actually have to measure this or not? So if you said this is quantitative, you are right. To say that this has a mass of 10 grams, I had to measure it. Right, third statement, the candle flame is hot. So if I get this relit, to get that statement, did I actually measure the temperature? No, I can simply put my hand close. With the sense of touch, I can make that observation that it is hot. I could turn that into a quantitative statement by actually measuring the temperature of that heat. But I didn't. I simply said that the candle flame is hot. So if you said that this statement was qualitative, you are correct. Right, so once again, what do you have to do? Make 2 minutes of observations before lighting. Once it's lit, 5 minutes of observations after you blow it out. 2 more minutes. You have to have 20 observations total. Let's do one example. Here's an observation. The candle is white. So notice that this is a complete sentence. Do not say things like "it is white," because someone reading that statement does not know what it is. So you have to be specific. The candle is white. Because I might think you're talking about the flame or the wick. So you have to say the candle is white. You also have to be as specific as possible. So if you happen to measure the height of your candle as an observation, be specific. Tell us where you measured that height. So you should say something like the height of the candle from the base to the top of the highest part of the candle is, let's say, 16 centimeters. You measure the base of the candle, be specific. Did you measure just the candle width itself, or did you also include any drips of wax in that width? So when you write your observations, complete sentences and be specific about how you took those measurements. So here's the statement. The candle is white. To start with, I have to decide, is that a fact or is it an inference? Well, I would call this a fact because I'm actually looking at it, and that's what it is. It is white. I'm going to classify this as a fact. Second classification, though, I have to decide, is it qualitative or is it quantitative? So to answer that, I have to ask the question, did I have to actually measure something to get this statement? Since I did not have to measure something, I'm going to call it qualitative. So that's what you need to do. Take 20 observations, write complete detailed sentences for observations. Take each observation and decide if it's fact or inference and if it's qualitative or quantitative. So you can start, and I'm anxious to see what you get.